You're live on HCAM TV.
Thank you, Bob. So it doesn't look like we have enough for a quorum yet. It looks like it's just Amy and I. This is Irfan trying to get in. So as soon as Irfan gets in, there he's in. All right.
Hello there.
Hello, Irfan. How are you?
Very good. How are you?
Good. I'm going to call the meeting to order. We have a quorum. Brian's going to be a few minutes late because it's related to that solar project and he doesn't want to be involved. So I'll call the meeting to order. As a preliminary matter, this is Brendan Tedstone, Select Board Chair. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Irfan Nasrullah?
Here.
Ryan Herr is not here. Mary Jo Lafreniere is not on yet. And Amy Ritterbush.
Here.
And Brendan Tedstone is obviously here. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Norman Kamalu?
Here.
Elaine Lazarus?
Here.
Additional speakers this evening may include Carol Kavanaugh, Susan Rothermich, Amanda Fargiano, Joe Markey, Meg Tyler, Nancy Richard Kavanaugh, Laya Battle Rafferty, Mike Manning, Todd Sestari, Shaidul Manan, Tim O'Leary, and Andrew Hayes. If there's anyone attending that would like to speak during public forum portion of the agenda, you must notify the meeting host in advance. You may do so now by using the raise hand feature of Zoom. I request a motion to enter an executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All right, so we're going to get out of Zoom and go to.
Oh, we have to state the reason, right?
You have to read the motion.
Okay. To discuss strategy with respect to pending litigation, William Scott Ober and Tom Robertson versus Town of Hopkins and Concom, Franklin Solar LLC and William Scott Ober and Tom Robinson versus Town of Hopkins and Planning Board, Franklin Road Solar LLC, Muriel Kramer, Gary Trendle, David Paul, Mary Larson Marlowe, Jane Moran, and Deb Feinbrug, because an open meeting may have detrimental effect on the litigating position of the board. To consider strategy with respect to the purchase, lease, sale of value of real property in relation to the Main Street parking, 2335 Main Street and the Main Street Corridor Project, formerly Liberty Mutual Property and Upper Charles Trail, because an open meeting law may have detrimental effect on negotiating position of the board. To allow Gary Trendle, John Gellich, Jeff Barnes, Don McAdam, Rami Aries, Rebecca Lacey, Chris Heap, Norman Kamala, and Lazarus to participate in their discussion, and to reconvene an open session at the conclusion of executive session. Mr. Nasrullah, how do you vote?
Nasrullah, yes.
Ms. Ritterbush?
Ritterbush, yes.
And Mr. Tedstone, yes. Mary Jo, are you on yet? No. Okay, so we will get off of Zoom and go to that Meet thing. So if you are going to leave your computer on, make sure that you mute and stop the video so no one can hear or see you. Thanks. You guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Brendan. This is Josh.
Thanks, Josh. I was having for my on that last executive session, my phone was kind of going in and out. So I'm just trying to see where we are right now with my Wi-Fi, if you can hear me or if it's glitchy.
Nope, you're loud and clear on my end.
Great, thank you. All right, so who do we got here? I see all the attendees. Let me see what we got for panelists. So right now it's just me. All right, there's Amy. And there's Brian. Okay, so we have a quorum here. As a preliminary matter, this is Brendan Tedstone, Select Board Chair. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Irfan Nasrullah. I don't see him on yet. Brian Herr.
Here.
Mary Jo Lafreniere is not on, and Amy Ritterbush.
Here.
And Tedstone is here, and I see Irfan Nasrullah is on as well, right?
Yes, I am here. It's really here.
Thank you. So this open meeting of the Hopkins Select Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of COVID-19 virus, we're complying with the executive order that suspends the requirement of open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. All members of the public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The executive order, which you can find posted with the agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely as long as the public body makes provisions through adequate alternative means to ensure interested members of the public are provided reasonable access to the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. For this meeting, the Select Board is convening by video conference via Zoom webinar is posted in the town's web meeting calendar and the board's agenda identifying how the public may join. Additionally, the meeting may also be broadcast by HCAM through one or many of its channels or platforms. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some of its attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that others may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. We are now turning to the first agenda item. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will invite board members to provide any comment, question, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way to generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in dialogue with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. Not every agenda item will feature public comment. For the public forum portion of the agenda, the chair will work with the meeting host to call on each pre-registered speaker to make their comment. Each speaker must begin by identifying their name and address. Each speaker will have up to 2 minutes for their comments. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. Pledge of Allegiance. Let's stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of
United
America,
States of
to the
America,
republic
to
for
the
which it
republic
stands,
stands,
one nation,
one
under
nation,
God,
under God,
liberty and justice.
indivisible, for all.
Thank you. Is there any member of the public that wishes to speak? If so, please identify your name. Josh, was there anyone that wanted to speak?
Mr. Chair, there were some hands raised originally, but I believe they were all folks that were joining in as a panelist as part of the budget conversation. So I don't know if there's any of those folks that also had their hand raised to speak at public comment.
Great. So if those people that had their hand raised, if they do wish to speak during public comment, go ahead and hit your raise hand button now. If not, forever hold your peace. Seeing none. Thank you. So fiscal year 2022 budget calendar and budget message. The board has invited the members of the school committee and appropriation committee to attend for this discussion of the FY 2022 budget timeline and the budget message to be conveyed to town departments. Josh, can you bring in the following as panelists? Carol Kavanaugh, Susan Rothermich, Amanda Fargiano, Joe Markey, Meg Tyler, Nancy Richard Kavanaugh, Laya, Battle, Rafferty, Mike Manning, Todd Sestari, Shadul Manan, and Tim O'Leary. Mr. Kamalu, if you would.
Okay, Mr. Chair, good evening. Good evening also to members of the school committee, the school superintendent, and the school business manager or finance director. Also, good evening to the appropriations committee. We have perhaps a three-phase outline for this discussion. As you all know, the town charter calls for this conversation to occur involving the school committee, appropriations committee, as well as the select board before finalizing the calendar for our FY22 budget process. Also, as you may have seen in the budget timeline, the proposed budget timeline that went out, we included the annual town meeting timeline. You'll understand why when we get to discussing that piece. And thus, what we are looking for tonight is for the finance or for the CFO, Tim O'Leary, to lay out the current financial conditions in town and the outlook that we believe impacts the budget process going forward. And then I will pose the major questions that we would like the gathering to discuss in terms of helping us define the budget message. And then last but not least, having heard what the financial outlook is, what we may be trying to accomplish through the FY22 budget process, we can then wrap up the discussion by looking at the timeline. So with your permission, Mr. Chair, may we have Mr. O'Leary outline the financial projections that we believe are pertinent to the budget discussion, especially the budget message.
I believe that Tim is user one and the attendees.
Sorry, I was muted there for some reason. Mr. O'Leary.
He needs to be promoted to panelist.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the chance to very briefly cover our financial starting point for the fiscal year 2022 budget cycle. The white paper that was distributed for this meeting shows a summary of where funds are flowing to support town operations in the current year. That information was included to provide the scale of what it costs to support our current level of services. The next relevant piece of information is the table on page 2 of the white paper, and that shows our current forecast of $3.8 million in additional recurring funding to meet new recurring cost needs next year. But that $3.8 million number needs to be considered in the following context of these few points. First, that number is based on using the full new tax levy available under Proposition 2.5 for fiscal year 2022. If there's a decision to use less than the full levy available, then the $3.8 million number will go down. Second, that number is based on current estimates of new growth. As discussed in the white paper, new growth will have some sensitivity to the overall economic recovery. So it's reasonable to say that if the recovery is sluggish, the $3.8 million number could go down. And if the recovery is robust, the $3.8 million number could go up. So as we progress through the budget process, the town will be monitoring and reporting on the economic recovery regularly. The third point on that number, the $3.8 million number includes new headspace from old debt that is being paid down or paid off. If the decision is made to restart capital renewal and improvements in FY22, any new principal and interest payments on new borrowings that are not voted as excluded debt would use up some of the $3.8 million identified as available. Finally, with respect to the $3.8 million that may be available, if the decision is made to sustain the FY21 level of services across town departments, a substantial portion of the $3.8 million would be required to pay for pay raises tied to collective bargaining agreements that are either in place or up for renegotiation, and for non-union employees, and to pay for inflationary increases that may arise from utilities, gasoline, and other commodities. Each of these four factors we've identified as variables, and each will impact the amount ultimately available to fund any new or expanded services that might be considered in your deliberations in the budget process. On a positive note, it's also worth remembering that the town is still holding substantial reserves as outlined in the white paper, including specific school reserves that are available to support one-time costs. And the town is holding nearly $1.7 million in unspent federal COVID-19 funding. As a final factor, when it comes to a restart of the capital program, the town's AAA bond rating will allow for substantial savings on any new projects. While there's a lot of uncertainty in this information, external factors will become more clear in the coming months. But with the information we do have, the town is in good position to begin planning for FY22.
Yes, thank you, Tim. And therefore, we believe, having reviewed prior year budget messages, having also analyzed some of the most recent discussions in town, especially in the context of COVID-19, we are suggesting the following four questions that could make or form the basis of the budget message. Number one, given today's estimates, as you heard from Tim, and with an understanding of the uncertainty of the local, state, and national economic outlook, does it seem reasonable to enter the FY 2022 budget process with a funding projection based on the 2.5% tax increase and the corresponding tax impact allowed by Proposition 2.5, allowing for 3.8 million in spending growth? I should mention the white paper identified 4.1 million. Upon further reflection, that number came down to 3.8 million. Number two, as we have seen in past years, service levels drive budgets. The quality of services that we provide that make Hopkinton what it is, what a great community it is. In FY 2021, in the depth of the recession, the town committed to maintaining service levels at FY 2020 levels, with additional targeted increases in student-centric spending at the Hopkinton Public Schools to specifically address enrollment increases. Therefore, does the town wish to extend FY 2021 service levels into FY 2022? Or is there a specific desire to adjust service levels upward in some areas and or downwards in others? Thirdly, and Tim alluded to this in his remarks, we as staff are recommending normal planning for resumption of capital spending in FY 2022. Is there a consensus that Hopkinton should initially plan for a capital improvement program for the FY 2022 budget? And then fourthly, community members have expressed an interest in ensuring that the town's local budgeting process and budget for FY22 continues to promote community objectives, including social equity and inclusion, as described in the preamble to our charter, especially during this period of fiscal stress and as COVID-19 has impacted residents' livelihoods. Is there consensus that further support to improve social equity and inclusion should be considered in the FY 2022 budget because of the economic stress on taxpayer families? Here's what comes to mind as we think about this question. In the past years, we have come up with tax relief programs for our seniors. Even when the select board has set water and sewer rates, that issue has not escaped your imagination. We have also increased our funding for public safety, as well as for our social services, with a specific viewpoint to make sure that everybody here in Hopkinton continues to access the fantastic services provided. I can share with you one of the most wonderful stories I had this past week. Last year, with your support, the community agreed to fund the public health nurse. And in my one-to-one meeting with the health services director this week, I learned about one of the many things that that position has accomplished for the town. Most recently, she was able to identify, working alongside youth and family services, families who may not have access to primary care physicians. She was able to provide those services for them, thereby allowing them to register for school here in Hopkinton. What a great story. And then last but not least, we're hoping that the discussion tonight will also endorse the proposed budget timeline. This is a timeline that was arrived at with input from our colleagues in the school department, town council for compliance with MGL, the town clerk to make sure that our election process is in place, as well as input from the assistant town manager. Our goals in establishing the timelines were threefold. Number one, we wanted to make sure that the budget timeline aligns with the timeline for our annual town meeting. Number two, we have heard loud and clear from the community of the need to have the conversations between the select board, the school committee, and the appropriations committee occur much earlier, rather than at the tail end of the process. And then last but not least, realizing how much of a challenge the forthcoming budget process would be, we feel that getting everybody to collaborate sooner rather than later will allow for the exchange that I think I've enjoyed over the past years in Hopkinton, the exchange and the dialogue on creative solutions to some of our budget challenges. And at this point, Mr. Chair, we'll take any questions from the group.
Brennan, you're muted.
Thank you. Dr. Kavanaugh, do you have any comments on that, on what Mr. Kamalu had said?
I think the one place where the school committee and I have some concerns, Mr. Tedstone, is around that timeline. I believe that every year we have pretty much a similar conversation. What we've done in past years is the first school committee meeting in January, which this year is the 7th, is typically when the superintendent presents her budget. On the 14th, we typically have our hearing, and then this year it would be the 21st that we would be submitting to the town manager our finalized budget, the one that the school committee will have voted on. And one of the things that we have in the timeline right now is a meeting with the select board and appropriations and the school committee on the 10th of December. We would like to suggest that they join us as well on that second Thursday evening in January, which is the 14th.
Okay. So Mr. Kamalo, can you note that, that we would like to join the school committee on that second school committee meeting in January, please?
Yes, so noted, January 14th, 2020.
Yeah.
Yes, yep.
Thank you.
That's the evening when the school committee votes on the FY22 budget.
Yep, thank you. And thank you, Dr. Kavanaugh. School committee, do you have anything?
Amanda has her hand up.
All right, Amanda, you're on mute. You're unmuted.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, thank you for having us here tonight. And I'm really looking forward to continuing the collaboration that we have been doing in the last few years, working with the town. I think things have been going really well. And so it's really nice to be here. I just wanted to speak on behalf of Dr. Kavanaugh and the principals, the administrators, just about this slightly shifted timeline suggestion. As you all know, it's been a challenging start to the school year. And there's a lot of work still going on to stabilize operations as we move from remote to hybrid and back and forth as events come up. So the administrators have been very consumed by the reopening and the work to get us moving forward. We are also opening a window in October for families to shift from remote to in-person or vice versa. And that creates a series of scheduling challenges and bus scheduling challenges and so forth. So I'm coming around a long way to say there's quite a bit of work going on the administration side. They're working at an inhuman pace right now in many cases. And I think if we could buy a little bit of time by shifting the schedule, particularly this year, to the one that Dr. Kavanaugh suggested, I think it would be greatly appreciated. It's difficult for me to consider asking the administrators to really dive in right now to the budget process today, given all the operational demands that they're facing right now. And they'll do it, but I think they're just going to need a little bit of time.
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Kamala.
Yeah, I think that point is well taken. As we have seen in past years, as long as we're sharing information earlier, we are very flexible in terms of our schedule. By the end of the day, I may have missed saying this. What this schedule tries to do is to make sure that all the information that we need to share with the public ahead of town meeting is ready and available for public review 2 weeks before town meeting. I can tell you, I love my job. I enjoy everything that I do. The most stressful moment that I always have is to be dealing with town meeting issues 2 hours before town meeting. And this is what we're trying to work to mitigate. We're trying to make sure that all boards make their reports available 2 weeks before town meeting. It's fair to the residents, it's fair to everybody else who's involved in the process. But again, my point being, we hear your concerns. I think on the town side also, as you may know, we've been dealing with COVID since February, and all of us have really been busy. We have additional reporting requirements under the CARES Act. However, we are committed to making sure that most of the questions that we have had come up during prior year budget discussions, we try and address. That's why we suggested the meeting on the 10th. I like the idea, Dr. Kavanaugh, of having that similar meeting again on the 14th. I do hear the concerns. However, I really would like us to try this and see if it works. And if it doesn't work, we always meet as a group. We will have those discussions.
Okay.
I completely understand through the chair. I completely understand the concerns on both sides here. If Mr. Kamalo is suggesting that these timelines be just, aspirational and see if we can get there without it being a firm deadline, was that something that would be acceptable to the school committee?
So if I may, through you, Brendan,
Yes.
the other concern, and I get the flexibility piece, but our concern is also that we have to set not only a public hearing, but then we have a week gap between when the public hearing occurs and then when we vote on it. We have to set that obviously well in advance, and it coming back from the winter break, it does not allow the same level of public participation if we hold it right after winter break when people have not been as tuned in. I think particularly this year, when we've been through such a, so much upheaval in the past year, we've had a lot more interest and involvement from the public. I would really like to ask for that additional week to let us vote on the 21st rather than the prior week. We'll encourage more engagement with the public.
Okay.
Brandon, if I could just add one more comment about the alignment. I think we all want to make sure that there are no surprises, that we can get our messages out quickly. I'm wondering if there has been discussion about re-energizing the budget advisory group and the process of meeting with appropriations and the select board on an ongoing basis so that we can stay very closely aligned throughout the process.
Yes, our position is that those meetings are part of our institution now, and those meetings will continue. However, I think what we're also realizing is there may be gaps in terms of how information transfers from those budget advisory groups to the larger boards and committees. That's why we've asked for the meeting on the 10th, as well as the meeting that we have now agreed to on the 14th.
If I could, through the chair.
Yep, go ahead.
I was going to suggest maybe we build those into the calendar, just say there will be at least one budget advisory group meeting prior to Thanksgiving or whatever. Just have them built in so we know when to anticipate.
So the budget advisory group has historically been the chair, vice chair of the select board, the chair, vice chair of the school committee, Dr. Kavanaugh, Mr. Kamalu, Mr. Manning. So I'm glad to go ahead and get together and have another one of those meetings. I don't know. This is why I'm glad that the professionals where Mr. Kamalu and Dr. Kavanaugh are trying to put this budget together in such a fluid society that we're in right now. I don't know how you could even throw a dart and try to create some type of a rational budget, but that's why I am glad to defer it back to the professionals.
If I may, Amy, I think over the years, we have identified the key points where those meetings need to occur. We, in fact, have worked out a process where we identify what day we meet of the week, and depending on the product or the output that we need to share with the rest of the boards, we can be meeting weekly, we can be meeting bi-weekly. It all depends on the work that needs to be done.
Yeah, I'd like to get away from meeting weekly. This has been a pretty crazy year, and yeah. So regardless, what do you need from us, Mr. Kamala?
Are there any questions on the budget?
Yeah, so I haven't gotten to the appropriations committee. Mr. Manning and crew, do you guys have any comments?
So if I can speak, I'll let others speak too, but I like the schedule as it is. I fully understand that it's going to be dynamic as we move forward, possibly, but it is a goal, and obviously we have to be prepared to roll with it, what happens moving forward. So, but I agree with everything that's been said so far. I don't know, Todd, Wayne, Shahidul, do you have any comments?
No comments. I concur.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
I agree as well.
All right. So I will go to the select board. Does select board, you have any comments? Mr. Nasrullah.
I mean, I guess it just sounds like such a fluid, dynamic situation here that it's really hard to ask anyone to come up with a budget at this point. But I understand the need. We have to. So, I'd say go forward as suggested.
Okay, Mr. Herr.
So it sounds like first read, we've got a pile of cash that can keep us going through FY22. If I understand what Tim and Mr. Kamala were talking about earlier. But I think to the points everyone else has made, it's going to be a very difficult year in which to really get an accurate budget early on. I do think that we need to take a look at a couple of scenarios as we budget this year. Not making for a ton of extra work, but we just got to assume that something may in fact fall apart on us. And I think it'd be wise to be prepared for some scenario like that to play out. I'm okay with a 2.5% increase, but I would want to see a budget with a 1% increase or some number we can agree to as a backup position. I know that creates an excess levy. I know that excess levy can create some challenges down the road, but we can figure that out in future years as we have in the past. The taxpayers are going to be strained, and I think we just need to have a couple different scenarios. And if we are flush with cash, perhaps we need to consider leaving some cash in the taxpayers' pockets. But we can get to that in far more detail in the coming months. But I think we have to be ready, Mr. Kamala, with a couple of scenarios as we get ready for that very fluid discussion.
Okay. Ms. Ritterbush?
I guess I would like to say that I would be in favor of moving that the school committee voting on the budget to January 21st, because I do agree that when you come back after the holiday break, and we'll see what the COVID situation is then, it seems like getting the budget voted January 14th is likely not going to happen. But anyway, that's my 2 cents. I do really appreciate that the town manager mentioned the equity inclusion issues. I think we have to really keep an eye on that, and depending on how the COVID situation goes, make sure we're supporting our residents if they need more health board of health, or not board of health, but health workers, mental health workers. We have to see what the need is as we go. And it's really important in this time. If we need more contact tracers and more testing, we have to keep an eye on that and keep that in mind in the budget.
Okay.
I think Ritterbush really just hit the nail on the head from where I'm coming from, is that we don't know, there's so much that we don't know. We don't know what our needs are going to be as we go forward. So, but I guess without that information now, there's not much we can do but try to plan, I guess.
Yep. All right. So,
Ms. Kavanaugh had her hand up.
Oh, Ms. Kavanaugh?
Thank you. Yeah, so I do want to be respectful of the fluidity of our situation. I agree, given the white paper, contextually, we really don't know what we're up against in so many realms of this budgeting process. But on the school side, our building principals, our central office administrators, they all sort of do a double meeting. They will come to central office and meet with Susan and me and discuss their budget. And then once we sort of massage that budget and take a look at, where the bottom line is for that particular administrator, then they go before the school committee and present the budget there. So for us, a timeline is actually pretty important because we have so many people, so many players who are integrally involved in how we arrive at whatever number we arrive at. When we're talking about something over $50 million and we really are looking at every dollar that everyone's putting forth, it's an awful lot of work. So I think just in terms of scheduling, I would really like to, in the next couple of days, kind of carve out when we'll be having our budget advisory meetings. And then my second question would be, in the event that we are not meeting that January 14th deadline, what is the mechanism for returning to this group and reestablishing a timeline? I mean, I know that right now we are talking about fluidity, but I think that we probably need just some kind of a mechanism to know where we'll go when we get to that place.
if I may, through the chair, at that point, Dr. Kavanaugh, the resolution would be administrative, similar to if the COVID situation or the economic situation worsens, clearly this calendar goes out through the window, and administratively we'll find a way to communicate those changes to the group, and also build consensus working through the budget advisory committee as well as individual boards and committees.
Okay.
Mr. Tedstone,
Yes.
I'd like to understand if we did shift the vote from school committee to the 21st, does that make it impossible to make our annual town meeting deadlines that are driving the budget timeline? Does that put you in a position that you can't meet the ATM guidelines that you have set?
Mr. Kamalo?
The challenge is based on the calendar. The town manager will have 5 days to put together the comprehensive budget.
So that deadline for the town budget of the 26th is firm, cannot be changed.
That's what we're working towards, making sure that we line that up with the annual town meeting warrant. And remember, the budget process comes along with capital articles.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's the 26th date.
We're also trying to avoid a situation where we have capital articles coming in after the budget is closed.
Yes. So I'm just trying to understand the fixed markers in the calendar. So the 26th is a fixed date, is what you're saying.
Yes.
So the February 1st, the warrant must close, it looks like, and that's clearly fixed.
But it sounds like the school committee and the superintendent are asking, is it one additional week that everyone's looking for here? So that you can do things 1 week after the vacation? Mr. Kamal, if we move it 1 week, what does that change in the process?
I think it's a very small gap before the town manager can combine the school budget with the town budget.
And also incorporate the
problem.
capital articles as well as CPC.
Can't we just back everything else up 1 week? Just take the whole thing and put it back 1 more week. So we're going from 2 hours before town meeting to 1 week instead of the 2 weeks that's the wish list. 2 weeks, right?
Again, when we started this conversation, we were 1 week back. We listened to the school input. We moved it 1 week forward. Now we're going to move it 2 more weeks from where we were starting off. Things get really, really tight. Again, I'm looking at this calendar as a guideline. If we are continuing to exchange information and collaborate, and there are no major challenges to work on, you could work with a tighter timeline. But by the end of the day, as we all said, there are many other things that all departments are dealing with right now. And trying to last minute is not a good idea.
That's probably why all the departments would like an extra week right now.
Yeah.
Not just the schools.
Yeah, which is what we already granted Brian, as I said.
Well, I think part of it too is just around trying to communicate, because we have that winter break in the middle of when Dr. Kavanaugh would present the budget and then when we would have the public hearing, and they'll forget. I mean, it's just an interesting way to be transparent with the community, because we have that break in the middle.
I think when we revised the charter, the budget calendar came to all of us, right? But yet we're not in the weeds day in and day out in town hall and in the superintendent's office, putting up with the millions of different things that they have to put up with every day. I really don't have a strong opinion about when we have the meetings and when we don't have the meetings. But I would encourage the team, this professional team that's living it every day, to figure it out. I know it comes to us through the charter, but as my kids would say, IDC, just get it done, right? And that's, I guess, what I'm saying to you guys is whether it's a week later or not, figure it out. But I don't think we should be spending another 20 minutes trying to figure out 4 or 5 days of our budget calendar here.
I have one more suggestion, if I
Sure.
might. Thank you. So what if the school committee were to move its meetings in January to Monday and we went with the 4th, 11th, and 18th? The 18th would back us up by 3 days and it would give you a lot more time to get to the 26th. That would also resolve the concern, I think, that the school committee has that when you make your budget presentation in December and then you have a hearing in January, many people have forgotten, lost interest, lost sight of the school budget, which we do feel like is a very important piece of the entire town's budget, given that it makes up 55% of it.
I think that's a reasonable suggestion. I'd ask the school committee members if there are any comments from anyone.
That works for me.
Yep, that works for me.
I'm comfortable with Mondays.
It's a reasonable compromise, and then we can kind of meet our needs and get it in a little sooner.
Question is, does it help Norman?
I think we can work with that.
Good.
So we would vote the budget on the 18th.
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Kamala, what do you need from us?
I'm hoping we can get individual votes from each of the boards tonight, supporting the budget schedule as discussed.
Mr.
School
Chair, I move
committee?
that the select board support the revised budget schedule discussed this evening, which gives the school committee an additional 3 days to do their work, and adjust the dates to Mr. Kamala's calendar by 3 or 4 days, whatever it was. Very distinct and definitive motion on my part.
I would second that.
Okay, any further discussion from our board? Hearing none. Mr. Nasrullah, how do you vote?
Nasrullah, yes.
Mr. Herr?
Or yes.
Ms. Ritterbusch?
Ritterbusch, yes.
And Ted Stone, yes. School committee?
Does anyone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the altered calendar.
I will second the motion.
Motion by Meg, second by Leah. Meg, how do you vote?
Aye.
Leah?
Aye.
Nancy?
Yes.
Joe? Joe is not present, and I'm an aye, so that passes 4.
Aye.
Oh, is that Joe?
Yes.
Thank you. It's unanimous.
Great.
And we would love to have the select board at that, instead of at that middle meeting in January, as we said before, not the 14th now, but the previous,
7th.
Or the 11th, is that?
the 11th, yeah.
Yes.
The 11th.
Okay.
Thank you.
Appropriations.
Okay, appropriations, do I hear a motion?
I move the motion to accept the altered schedule for the budget.
I will second.
Okay, we're ready for a vote. Todd, is Todd still on the call?
No, I think you dropped, Mike.
Okay, Todd. All right, Wayne,
Yes.
Shadul,
Shahidul, yes.
and I vote yes, so 3-0, yes.
Great. That's great. So Mr. Kamalu, are we all set with this? Can we put this motion to bed?
Yes, in terms of the calendar, yes, we would appreciate any comments or questions the boards or committees may have on the components of the budget message.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
So I think the questions being posed to help formulate what the ultimate budget message will be makes sense. I would just add to that, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, the need for a contingency budget based on not taxing to the full 2.5% allowed. If the year is fairly stable and the year is quote unquote fairly normal, then I wouldn't really push that issue too much. But if the economy continues to stagnate or go backwards, we have another big outbreak and all heck breaks loose, then I would absolutely push that we take it easy on the taxpayers who are going to be suffering in many ways, including financial. But we don't know that yet. So let's just be ready for it. I'm not saying that's what I want to do yet, but I think we need to be ready for it.
Okay. Yep, I like that thought process. Board, select board, anyone else have anything on that?
I think I would just agree that we want to stick to Prop 2.5 plus new growth, aid and receipts and everything, but have to keep a close eye on changing needs in the community. Maybe prioritize certain things as needed.
Obviously, it's a very, very fluid situation. Our entire society is, let alone our town. So I trust that Mr. Kamalu and Dr. Kavanaugh will keep a close eye on these things and go from there. School committee, anything else?
I just want to echo the comments earlier about the budget consideration on both the school committee side and on the select board side for equity and inclusion. And I appreciate the inclusion of that point in the questions that Mr. Kamalo added. That is important to keep in our focus.
Mm-hmm.
School committee members, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Hi, Amanda. This is Joe. There was comments made about kind of just ongoing open communication between the budget directors for the school and the town, and I think that's something we want to reiterate. I think it happens anyway, but the more that Mr. O'Leary and Ms. Rothermish can kind of keep each other apprised of what's happening, that'll make the checkpoint meetings that more productive.
Thank you. Yep. I think, yeah, Dr. Kavanaugh, do you have anything else to add?
I just want to say thank you to everyone for your collaboration. I think that we've come to a really good compromise, and one that works for the school and hopefully works for the community.
Yes, likewise. Very much appreciate the shift in the schedule for us, and all the collaboration and the clarity in the white paper was extremely clear and helpful. So thank you, Mr. O'Leary, for that.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, do we have a sense on the question of the capital plan? Do we want to plan for a capital plan for next year?
Mr. Kamalo, Mr. Herr, defer to.
Yeah, staff recommendation is that we include a capital plan as part of the FY 2022 budget. We have free cash already certified that we could apply towards that if needed.
Okay.
Ms. Rothermick, do you have any comments on the capital plan for schools?
I think it'd be difficult to hold off on a capital plan for 2 years. So it would be helpful to be able to put forward the capital request for FY22.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I wouldn't have a problem with us developing a capital plan for FY22. But like I said, with the overall operating budget, we have to wait and see, and we may have to pull the plug, and hopefully we don't. But we need to be ready for it. We can't be surprised if that's the will of the community as we get closer to town meeting. So we'll see. But I think it would be tough to go 2 years without some level of capital investment.
Right. Yep, agreed.
I agree completely. I think it's just we have to keep an eye on what's going on. If the outbreak goes crazy again, sometimes you just gotta roll with the punches, and we need to pull some of those capital projects. We should be prepared to.
Yep. I think the town showed great resiliency in getting through our town meeting the way we did and pulling all those capital items this year. So, just quote, a past member, we can't just keep kicking everything down the road, kicking the can down the road. We'll have to address things regardless of what of what the situation with COVID and our society is. So, right now, September 29th, it's easy to say we'll hold off for a little bit, but at some point we're going to have to seriously address that, COVID or not. Because like the school roof doesn't become less in disrepair because of COVID, and the sanders and backhoes don't become in less disrepair. So at some point we're going to have to bite the bullet and address the elephant in the room. But right now, tonight's meeting, we do not have to do that, I don't think.
Yeah, I agree with the others that we should make some kind of capital plan, but have prioritization in mind if we have to eliminate some of them. We'll see. The one thing I wanted to add to several of the documents that we discussed tonight, I don't think were in the meeting packet. I want to make sure those get posted on the town website later, the timeline, the white paper, and the budget message.
All right, so
we will make sure that happens.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so Mr. Kamala, are we all set with this? Can we move on to the consent agenda?
Please, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your
All right.
time. Thank you for your
Committee, Appropriations Committee, thank you very much.
School committee, I
Thank
just need a
you.
motion to adjourn, please.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Motion by Joe,
Second.
second by Leah. Joe, what's your vote?
Aye.
Meg?
Aye.
Leah?
Aye.
Nancy?
Yes.
And I'm an aye as well, so we are adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.
Everyone.
Everyone.
Thank you.
And Mr. Manning and Appropriations, thank you very much as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
All right, consent agenda. The board will consider approving the consent agenda consisting of number one, approval of the minutes of the September 8 and 12, 2020 meetings, and two, sign the November 3, 2020 state election warrant. Would any member like to pull out any item for a separate vote? Okay, so I will request a motion to approve the consent agenda item as written.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, how do you vote? Mr. Nasrullah?
Nasrullah, yes.
Mr. Herr?
Yes.
Ms. Ritterbusch?
Ritterbusch, yes.
Headstone, yes. So on appointments, Andrew Michael Hayes has requested reappointment to the Sustainable Green Committee. At this time, there are 7 vacancies. Board members, are there any questions for Mr. Hayes?
No.
I have none.
Okay, hearing none, I request a motion to approve Andrew Michael Hayes to the Sustainable Green Committee to a term expiring June 30, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Nasrullah, how do you vote?
Nasrullah, yes.
Mr. Herr?
Yes.
Ms. Ritterbusch?
Ritterbusch, yes.
Mr. Tedstone, yes. Confirmation of allowed use. A to Z Laboratories, 100 South Street. The board will consider formally confirming that a marijuana testing laboratory is an allowed use at 100 South Street and authorize the town manager to submit the response on behalf of the town. Chuck Cadlick, Director of Municipal Inspection Zoning Enforcement Officer, has confirmed that the use is permitted. This step is a requirement of the Cannabis Control Commission in the licensing process. Any discussion or questions?
So just so I understand, this is just, the A to Z is now going to submit their permit application to the Cannabis Control Commission, and they need us to say that it is an allowed use, correct?
Correct. That's part of the application packet that A to Z will need to submit to the commission.
Okay.
And this step has nothing to do with that one letter we received, making all kinds of wild accusations about the firm.
Oh, I'd forgotten about that.
About their mission
Small.
statement,
I'm sorry?
about their, what was that, about the TIF?
It was an
I don't
accusation
know.
of plagiarism.
It was they obviously have an issue and they just went off. I just want to make sure this is part of a normal process and we're not reacting to some political whim of 1 or 2 people.
This is part of the application process, the formal application process. There are some items that the applicant needs to submit to the commission, including this consent from the town as well as the host community agreement.
Okay, thank you.
So I would like to note on this, and I don't know if this is Mr. Kamalo or Ms. Lazarus, but I would love to thank you guys for adding a space between the A and the 2 and then a space to the Z. So I didn't call it ATOZ again. So thank you guys very much. Oops, I went the wrong way on my papers here.
So-
Mr. Chair, I move to confirm that a marijuana testing laboratory is an allowed use at 100 South Street and to authorize the town manager to submit a formal response to the Cannabis Control Commission on behalf of the town.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Nasrullah, how do you vote?
Nasrullah, yes.
Mr. Herr?
Herr, yes.
Ms. Ritterbusch?
Ritterbusch, yes.
Headstone, yes. Thank you very much. Town manager report, Mr. Kamalu.
No updates tonight, Mr. Chair.
Perfect. Liaison report, board invitees. Mr. Nasrullah, do you have anything?
None for me.
Ms. Ritterbusch?
I will note that the growth study committee recently appointed and had a new member appointed, and then they submitted or they presented to the planning board last week about some direction about going forward for this year. Sounds like they're going to be having some more, well, I don't know exactly forums because you can't be in person, but some opportunities for public input.
That's good. Mr. Herr?
Nothing to report.
Nothing from me. So I would be remiss if I didn't note that it was brought to our attention yesterday, I believe, by Mr. Kamalu, that Ms. Lazarus is celebrating her 35th anniversary in town government. We as me as a chair of the select board and as a select board member, and even as a member of the Board of Selectmen, I would like to thank Ms. Lazarus's hard work and dedication that she's given to the town long before I was a select person. She's done a great job, and congratulations on 35, I'm sure, easy, non-confrontational, and very docile years of service. So congratulations, Ms. Lazarus.
Congratulations, Ms. Lazarus. Fabulous job.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So this is where we would have you have like a 10 or 15 minute speech, Ms. Lazarus. But we'll table that till the next meeting.
We'll wait for town meeting. You can go up to our town meeting.
Yeah. So that being said, Mr. Nasrullah, if you would take over my favorite motion of the night.
Wait a minute, future agenda.
Future agenda items.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I meant. What did you think I meant?
Adjourn.
Future agenda items. Mr. Nasrullah, what do you got?
I don't have any.
Mr. Herr?
Nothing.
Ms. Ritterbusch?
Yeah. So I had been thinking that we just finished our town meeting and we're going to already be heading into the next budget season. But I thought it would be a really good idea if we went ahead and scheduled some future agenda items, such as the discussing whether we want to adopt the MPAC local officials pledge to take action on systemic racism, and whether or not we want to revise our public comment policy, because we currently ask people to submit their comments like the Friday before, but we don't really follow through with that. So anyway, it hasn't been revised since 2007. So I wondered if we could pick a couple of days today of meetings that are not busy that we could fit those in.
Sure. I don't know how many meetings we have that are not busy, but
well, you have to understand from the planning board, our meetings are 3 hours long. So these getting done at 7:30.
So yes,
it's not busy to me.
we have had meetings prior to the last couple of years that have been 3-4 hours long too. It's yeah, but we can certainly get with Mr. Kamalu and we can figure that out. That's no problem.
I think that's a great idea. Like, let's get it on the agenda so we can start moving on this.
Yeah. All right.
Have 2 October meetings, right? So maybe one of those would be good.
Okay. Well, we'll see what we got for agenda items. If we have a light meeting our first weekend in October, we can get it on there, and if not, we'll get it on our first our first, the first available, the first time that we can. So now my second favorite motion of the night, Mr. Nasrullah.
I move to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Nasrullah, how do you vote?
Nasrullah, yes.
Her?
Her, yes.
Ms. Ritterbush?
Ritterbush, yes.
Stone, yes. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thanks. Good night, everyone.
Good night.